I stood in the hospital emergency room at 3 in the morning, my right arm throbbing in a fresh cast, watching security camera footage on Detective Murphy's tablet. There she was, clear as daylight on the screen. My own daughter-in-law, Crystal, shoving me down the basement stairs with deliberate force. The detective looked up grimly and said the words that changed everything. "Mrs. Patterson, this wasn't an accident. We're filing assault charges." As Crystal and my son Marcus sat in the waiting room believing they had successfully covered their tracks, I realized my lottery win had turned my own family into dangerous strangers willing to hurt me for money. 2 months earlier, I was living what most people would call a blessed life in my comfortable ranch home on Maple Street in Springfield, Missouri. At 65, I had enjoyed 3 peaceful years of widowhood after losing my beloved husband Harold to cancer. Teaching elementary school for 37 years had given me a modest pension, and Harold's life insurance meant I never worried about paying bills or buying groceries. My daily routine brought me genuine contentment. Monday mornings found me volunteering at the Springfield Animal Shelter, where I helped socialize rescue dogs and cats. Tuesday through Thursday, I tended my backyard garden, growing prize-winning tomatoes and the most spectacular roses in the neighborhood. Friday evenings were reserved for bridge club with my 3 closest friends at the community center. My son Marcus, 32 years old, worked as an insurance adjuster for Midwest Mutual. He had married Crystal 5 years earlier, a former dental hygienist who quit working after their wedding. Crystal was 28, petite, with bleached blonde hair and a smile that never quite reached her eyes. She had grown increasingly demanding over the years, constantly hinting that Marcus deserved better opportunities and that his family should do more to help them succeed. The lottery ticket that changed everything came from Murphy's Corner store on a routine Thursday afternoon in September. For 15 years, I had played the same numbers every week: Harold's birthday, our anniversary date, and the day Marcus was born. Mrs. Murphy always smiled when I bought my ticket, knowing exactly which numbers I wanted without asking. That evening, I was preparing dinner when the local news announced the winning lottery numbers. My fork clattered to the floor as I recognized every single digit: $6 million. After taxes, it would be approximately $4.2 million in a lump sum payment. The verification process at the Missouri Lottery headquarters in Jefferson City felt surreal. Officials confirmed my win, photographers took pictures, and reporters asked about my plans for the money. I told them honestly that I needed time to process this unexpected blessing. My plans seemed reasonable and responsible. I would keep most of the money invested in safe, conservative funds. If Marcus had legitimate needs or opportunities, I would certainly help within reason. I also wanted to donate to local charities that had meant something to Harold and me: the animal shelter, the literacy program at the library, and our church's food pantry. I decided to share the news first with my bridge club friends over our regular Friday dinner at Romano's Italian restaurant. Betty, my next-door neighbor for 23 years, nearly choked on her breadstick. Margaret and Susan screamed so loudly that other diners turned to stare. We laughed until tears ran down our cheeks, and I felt Harold's presence in that moment of pure joy. That celebration ended abruptly when Crystal burst through the restaurant's front door, her face flushed with anger. She had clearly been listening outside my kitchen window earlier when I called the lottery office to verify my numbers. "Why wasn't I told immediately?" she demanded, standing beside our table with her hands on her hips. "I'm family. I shouldn't have to hear about this from the evening news." I explained calmly that I had needed time to process such life-changing news privately before sharing it with anyone. Crystal's eyes narrowed dangerously. "That's selfish and secretive, Dina. Family should stick together, especially during important moments like this." Marcus appeared moments later, having followed Crystal from their car. Instead of congratulating me or asking how I felt about the win, he immediately took his wife's side. Mom, Crystal's right. You should have called us first. This affects all of us, and frankly, you're probably too old to handle this much money responsibly. You need family guidance to make smart decisions. The words stung more than I expected. My own son questioning my mental capacity because I had won money felt like a betrayal I never saw coming. Within a week of the lottery announcement, Crystal and Marcus began visiting every single day. They would arrive around 10 in the morning, bringing coffee and pastries from the expensive bakery downtown, settling into my living room as if they belonged there permanently. Crystal's approach was methodical and calculated. She would begin each conversation with seemingly innocent questions about my financial plans, gradually building toward more specific demands. Marcus supported every suggestion she made, nodding enthusiastically as if they had rehearsed their presentations beforehand. "Dina, we've been thinking," Crystal announced during their third daily visit, spreading glossy brochures across my coffee table. "Marcus has an incredible opportunity to start his own luxury car dealership. He just needs $2.5 million for the initial investment. Think about it. Your son running his own business, building generational wealth for your future grandchildren." The brochures showed expensive German automobiles and gleaming showroom floors. Marcus leaned forward, eagerly explaining how he had already identified the perfect location on the south side of town near the new shopping development. Mom, this could set us up for life," he said, his eyes bright with excitement. "Crystal's been researching the luxury car market in this region. There's definitely demand for high-end vehicles, especially with all the new construction bringing wealthy families to Springfield." Crystal opened another set of brochures featuring magnificent homes in the city's most exclusive neighborhoods. "Of course, if Marcus is going to be a successful business owner, we need to upgrade our lifestyle to match our new family status. These houses range from $800,000 to $1.2 million. Nothing too extravagant, just appropriate for our position in the community." My polite refusals seemed to bounce off them like rain on a windshield. I explained that I wanted time to consult with financial advisors before making any major decisions. Crystal's smile grew tighter with each conversation. "Dina, opportunity doesn't wait for consultants," she said, her voice taking on a sharp edge. "By the time you finish talking to advisors and attorneys, the dealership location will be gone. Someone else will snap up that property, and Marcus will lose his chance at real success." Between their daily visits, I found solace in conversations with my support network. Betty, who had become my closest friend since Harold's death, listened patiently as I described the mounting pressure from Crystal and Marcus. Her weathered hands gestured expressively as she spoke her mind. "Dina, honey, that girl sees dollar signs instead of family. You earned that money fair and square, and you have every right to do whatever you want with it. Don't let them bully you into decisions you'll regret later." Pastor Williams at First Methodist had counseled families for over 20 years. When I sought his advice during office hours, his concerned expression told me he had seen similar situations before. "Financial windfalls often reveal people's true character," he said gently. "The Bible teaches us about good stewardship, but it also warns against greed and manipulation. Trust your instincts, Dina. If something feels wrong, it probably is." My sister Janet, who lived in California, called every few days to check on me. During one particularly difficult conversation, I described how Crystal had begun manipulating family gatherings to increase pressure on me. "She invited Marcus's cousins from Kansas City last weekend," I told Janet. "During dinner, she kept referring to me as the family matriarch, who was responsible for everyone's success. It felt like emotional blackmail disguised as respect." Janet's voice carried the protective tone I remembered from our childhood. "Dina, that woman is playing psychological games with you. You don't owe anyone your lottery winnings, not even Marcus. If they really loved you, they would be happy for your good fortune without demanding a piece of it. The manipulation grew more subtle and insidious as weeks passed. Crystal began questioning my memory about conversations we had never actually had. "Remember when you promised to help Marcus with his business dreams?" she would say during their visits. "You specifically mentioned wanting to invest in his future." When I insisted I had made no such promises, Crystal would exchange meaningful glances with Marcus, as if my confusion proved some underlying problem with my mental capacity. "Mom, maybe you're feeling overwhelmed by all this financial responsibility," Marcus would suggest. "It's understandable that you might not remember every conversation clearly. This is a lot of stress for someone your age to handle alone." Their gaslighting tactics became bolder as my resistance continued. Crystal started bringing medical articles about age-related cognitive decline, leaving them strategically placed on my kitchen counter or coffee table. The headlines always seemed to focus on memory loss confusion and the importance of family support during difficult transitions. One evening in late October, I was watering my houseplants when I overheard Crystal talking on her phone outside my kitchen window. Her voice carried clearly through the screen. "The old lady is being stubborn, but we'll get what we deserve. She can't take it with her anyway, and Marcus is her only heir. If we have to wait for nature to take its course, fine, but I'm not spending the next 20 years watching that money sit in some boring savings account." My hands trembled as I set down the watering can. When Crystal came inside moments later, I confronted her directly about the conversation. "Oh, that," she laughed dismissively. "I was talking to my sister about our neighbor, Mrs. Henderson. Her family is going through the exact same situation with inheritance issues. It's such a common problem these days." But I knew what I had heard. Crystal viewed me as an obstacle to be removed, not a family member to be cherished and protected. That night, I began documenting every interaction with them in a spiral notebook I kept hidden in my bedroom closet. Crystal's next strategy proved far more dangerous than her previous attempts at emotional manipulation. She began suggesting to friends, neighbors, and anyone who would listen that I was showing early signs of dementia or serious confusion. "We're so worried about Dina," she confided to Mrs. Henderson during a chance encounter at the grocery store. "She's been forgetting appointments, getting lost while driving around town, and making really questionable financial decisions. The lottery win has just made everything worse because now she has access to so much money while her judgment is clearly declining." Mrs. Henderson, bless her heart, immediately called to check on me after that conversation. Her concern touched my heart, but it also revealed how effectively Crystal was spreading lies about my mental state throughout the community. The real alarm bells started ringing when Crystal scheduled what she called a routine checkup with Dr. Phillips, my primary care physician for the past 8 years. She insisted on driving me to the appointment and accompanying me into the examination room. "Doctor, I'm so glad we could arrange this visit," Crystal began before Dr. Phillips could even greet me properly. "As I explained over the phone, we've been noticing some concerning changes in Dina's behavior since her husband passed away." I sat in stunned silence as Crystal proceeded to provide a detailed list of fabricated symptoms and incidents. According to her fictional account, I had been forgetting to pay bills, getting confused about dates and times, leaving the stove on overnight, and making irrational financial decisions since winning the lottery. She bought $300 worth of cat food last week, even though she doesn't own a cat, Crystal lied smoothly. When Marcus asked her about it, she couldn't remember making the purchase at all. We found the receipt in her purse, but she insisted someone else must have put it there. Dr. Phillips listened intently, making notes in my medical file while shooting concerned glances in my direction. When he finally addressed me directly, his tone had shifted to the careful, condescending voice people use with small children or confused elderly patients. Mrs. Patterson, how are you feeling about managing your finances these days? Do you ever feel overwhelmed or uncertain about making important decisions? I tried to explain that Crystal was lying, that I had never exhibited any of the behaviors she described, but my protests only seemed to reinforce their narrative that I was becoming defensive and paranoid about my declining capabilities. Denial is very common in early stage cognitive decline, Dr. Phillips explained to Crystal as if I were not sitting right there. Patients often become defensive when family members express legitimate concerns about their mental state. Crystal nodded sympathetically. That's exactly what we're seeing at home, doctor. She gets angry when we try to help her organize her finances or suggest that maybe she needs assistance managing such a large sum of money. The appointment concluded with Dr. Phillips recommending a comprehensive cognitive evaluation and suggesting that Crystal and Marcus should consider taking a more active role in managing my financial affairs. In cases like this, it's often helpful to have family members added to bank accounts for emergency purposes, he advised. That way, if Mrs. Patterson does experience confusion or makes impulsive financial decisions, there are safeguards in place to protect her assets. Walking out of that medical office felt like escaping from a nightmare. Crystal had successfully manipulated my own doctor into questioning my mental competency using his professional authority to legitimize her fraudulent claims about my cognitive abilities. That evening, Marcus arrived at my house with official-looking bank forms requiring my signature to add him as a joint account holder on my checking and savings accounts. "Mom, this is just a precaution," he explained, though his tone lacked the warmth I remembered from his childhood. "Dr. Phillips thinks it's important to have family backup on your accounts, especially now that you're managing such substantial amounts of money. We're not trying to control your finances. We just want to make sure you're protected." I refused to sign the documents, which triggered the first of many heated arguments about my supposed lack of cooperation and family loyalty. Marcus accused me of being paranoid and ungrateful for their concern about my well-being. During the days following that disastrous medical appointment, I noticed Crystal had begun documenting every minor mistake I made. If I momentarily forgot where I had placed my reading glasses, she would make a note in her phone. If I hesitated while trying to remember someone's name during conversation, she would exchange meaningful looks with Marcus. Sunday dinners at my house transformed from pleasant family gatherings into interrogation sessions about my daily activities. Crystal would ask detailed questions about my schedule testing, whether I could accurately recall appointments, errands, or conversations from earlier in the week. "Dina, didn't you mention on Tuesday that you were planning to visit the bank on Thursday?" she would probe. "But when I called the bank to ask about your appointment, they said you never showed up. Are you sure you didn't get confused about the day?" Of course, I had never scheduled any bank appointment or mentioned planning such a visit. Crystal was creating fictional scenarios to test my memory, then using my accurate denials as evidence of confusion and forgetfulness. Marcus began treating me like a fragile invalid who needed constant supervision. He questioned my ability to drive safely, suggested I was becoming too isolated living alone, and repeatedly mentioned the benefits of assisted living communities for people who needed extra support managing their daily affairs. "Mom, there are some really nice places in Springfield where you could have your own apartment, but also access to meals, housekeeping, and medical care," he said during one particularly painful conversation. "You wouldn't have to worry about maintaining this big house or handling complicated financial decisions by yourself." The final straw came when I discovered Crystal had been secretly meeting with Dr. Phillips multiple times, providing additional fabricated evidence of my mental decline. I only learned about these appointments when his receptionist accidentally mentioned them during a phone call about scheduling my next visit. "Oh, Mrs. Patterson, should I schedule your daughter-in-law for the same time as your appointment next week? She's been so helpful providing information about your condition during her visits with Dr. Phillips. My blood ran cold as I realized the extent of Crystal's deception. She had been systematically building a false medical record to support her claims that I was mentally incompetent to manage my own affairs. That night, I called Betty and asked her to come over immediately. As I explained the situation to my trusted friend, she listened with growing horror and anger. "Dina, this is elder abuse," Betty said firmly. "Crystal is trying to steal your money by convincing people you're mentally incompetent. We need to do something about this before it goes any further." For the first time since winning the lottery, I began to see my situation clearly. Crystal and Marcus were not concerned family members trying to protect me from poor financial decisions. They were criminals attempting to gain control of my assets through fraud and manipulation. I had documented evidence of their lies in my notebook. I had witnesses to their inappropriate behavior during family gatherings. Most importantly, I had finally recognized the truth about their intentions before it was too late to protect myself. The next morning, I began making phone calls to people who could help me fight back against this elaborate conspiracy to steal my lottery winnings. The first person I contacted was my sister Janet in California. Despite the early hours, she answered on the second ring, and her voice carried immediate concern when she heard my shaky greeting. "Dina, what's wrong? You sound terrible." I explained everything. Crystal's medical manipulation, Dr. Phillips's willingness to consider incompetency proceedings based on fabricated evidence, and Marcus's increasing pressure for me to sign over financial control to him. Janet listened without interrupting, but I could hear her sharp intake of breath when I described the fake bank appointment scenario. "Honey, this is serious criminal behavior," she said when I finished. "You need professional help immediately. I have a friend in Los Angeles who works as a private investigator. Let me call her and get a recommendation for someone in Missouri." Within 2 hours, Janet called back with contact information for Sam Rodriguez, a private investigator in Springfield who specialized in financial fraud cases. Sam's office was located downtown in a modest building near the courthouse, and he agreed to meet with me that very afternoon. Sam Rodriguez turned out to be a soft-spoken man in his 50s with graying temples and kind eyes. His office walls were covered with certificates and awards from law enforcement organizations. When I explained my situation, he took detailed notes and asked pointed questions about Crystal and Marcus's financial circumstances. "Mrs. Patterson, everything you're describing follows a classic pattern of financial elder abuse," he said. "The medical manipulation is particularly concerning because it's designed to establish legal grounds for taking control of your assets. We need to move quickly to document their real motivations and activities." Sam's investigation began immediately. Within a week, he had uncovered information that shocked me despite my growing suspicions about Crystal's character. "Your daughter-in-law has gambling debts totaling $87,000 at 3 different riverboat casinos," Sam reported during our second meeting. "She's been playing high-stakes poker and slot machines for at least 2 years, using credit cards and taking cash advances to fund her addiction." The evidence was overwhelming. Sam had obtained photographs of Crystal at gaming tables, credit card statements showing cash advances at casino ATMs, and records of increasingly desperate attempts to win back her losses through larger bets. "There's more," Sam continued. "Your son Marcus is not the successful insurance adjuster he pretends to be. He's currently on probation at Midwest Mutual for processing fraudulent claims. His supervisor told me confidentially that Marcus has 6 months to improve his performance or face termination. The luxury car dealership plan was completely fictional." Sam had investigated the supposed location Marcus mentioned and discovered that the property was not available for lease. The business proposal they had presented to me was entirely fabricated to justify their need for immediate access to large amounts of money. They're planning to pay off Crystal's gambling debts and disappear with whatever money remains, Sam explained. This isn't about starting a business or upgrading their lifestyle. It's about avoiding financial ruin and possibly criminal charges related to the gambling debts. Armed with this information, I realized I needed immediate legal protection for my assets. Sam recommended Harold Morrison, an attorney who specialized in estate planning and elder law. Harold's office occupied an entire floor of the tallest building in downtown Springfield, and his reputation for protecting elderly clients from financial exploitation was widely respected. Harold reviewed Sam's investigative report and listened carefully as I described Crystal and Marcus's escalating pressure tactics. His recommendations were swift and decisive. "We need to create an irrevocable trust immediately," he advised. "This will remove the majority of your assets from your direct control, making it impossible for anyone to access them through power of attorney or guardianship proceedings." The trust structure he proposed was elegant in its simplicity. The bulk of my lottery winnings would be transferred into a trust managed by Harold's law firm. I would receive monthly distributions sufficient to maintain my current lifestyle with additional funds available for legitimate emergencies or charitable donations. The principal amount would be completely protected from any attempts at financial manipulation. Even if someone obtained guardianship over you through fraudulent means, they could not touch the trust assets, Harold explained. The money would be legally separated from your personal ownership, administered according to the terms we established today. Working with Betty's help, I also installed a sophisticated security camera system throughout my house. The cameras were small and discreet, positioned to record conversations and activities in the living room, kitchen, and basement areas, where Crystal and Marcus spent most of their time during visits. Betty proved to be an invaluable ally in implementing my counter strategy. She helped me research the camera equipment, drove me to appointments with Sam and Harold when I needed emotional support, and provided a safe place to store documents and evidence where Crystal and Marcus could never find them. "I've watched that girl manipulate you for months," Betty said as we positioned the final camera behind a decorative plant in my living room. "It's time to turn the tables and show her what real consequences look like." The most crucial element of my plan required me to act more confused and vulnerable to encourage Crystal's aggression. If she believed her manipulation tactics were working, she might become careless enough to reveal her true intentions on camera. I began making small mistakes during their daily visits, forgetting names, appearing uncertain about dates, asking repetitive questions about financial matters. Crystal's eyes lit up with satisfaction each time I displayed apparent confusion. "Marcus, did you see that?" she would whisper loudly enough for me to overhear. "She asked about the bank appointment 3 times in 10 minutes. This is getting worse much faster than we expected." Meanwhile, I secretly transferred $4 million into Harold's irrevocable trust, leaving only $1,200 in my regular checking account. I created fake bank statements showing the full lottery amount still available, knowing that Crystal regularly snooped through my personal papers when she thought I was not watching. Pastor Williams had grown increasingly suspicious of Crystal's behavior during the family counseling sessions she had insisted we attend. When I privately explained the real situation to him, he agreed to serve as a witness to their manipulative tactics and document any concerning statements they made during our meetings. "That young woman has been using scripture about honoring parents and family loyalty to justify financial demands," he told me after one particularly uncomfortable session. "Real faith doesn't operate through guilt, fear, and manipulation. What she's doing is the opposite of Christian love. My sister Janet arranged to visit from California, timing her trip to coincide with what I suspected would be Crystal and Marcus's final attempt to gain control of my finances. Janet's presence would provide an additional witness to their behavior and emotional support during what promised to be a difficult confrontation. The trap was set perfectly. Crystal and Marcus believed they were successfully manipulating a confused, vulnerable elderly woman into surrendering her financial independence. In reality, they were walking directly into a carefully documented case of attempted elder abuse fraud and conspiracy. Sam continued monitoring Crystal's gambling activities and discovered that her debts were increasing rapidly. Recent credit card statements showed cash advances totaling $15,000 in a single week, indicating that her desperation was reaching critical levels. "She's running out of time," Sam warned me. "People who owe this much money to gambling establishments don't get unlimited extensions. Crystal is going to make her move very soon, and it's probably going to be aggressive." As October turned into November, the tension in my house became palpable during Crystal and Marcus's visits. They could sense my apparent increasing confusion, but my continued resistance to their financial demands frustrated them beyond their ability to maintain polite facades. Mom, you're being completely irrational about this," Marcus snapped during one heated conversation about the car dealership investment. "We're trying to help you make smart decisions with your money, but you keep acting like we're trying to steal from you." Crystal's mask slipped more frequently as well. When she thought I was not listening, I heard her on the phone with someone discussing timelines and deadlines in urgent, worried tones. "We can't wait much longer," she said during one call I recorded through my hidden camera system. "The interest is accumulating faster than we can pay it down, and there are people asking questions about when we're going to settle these debts." Everything was building toward a final confrontation where Crystal and Marcus would reveal their true intentions and provide me with the evidence I needed to have them arrested for their crimes against me. The confrontation I had been anticipating arrived on a cold Tuesday evening in mid-November. Crystal and Marcus knocked on my door at 8:30, much later than their usual morning visits. When I answered, both of their faces showed an urgency and determination that immediately put me on alert. "Dina, we need to talk," Crystal announced, pushing past me into the living room without waiting for an invitation. "We've brought some important papers that require your immediate attention." Marcus followed her inside, carrying a manila folder thick with official-looking documents. They settled on my couch without removing their coats, suggesting they expected this to be a brief visit. "Mom, we've been patient with your hesitation about family financial planning, but the situation has reached a crisis point." Marcus began, his tone more forceful than I had ever heard before. "Dr. Phillips called today with test results that confirm what Crystal and I have been observing about your cognitive decline." This was a complete lie. I had not taken any cognitive tests, and Dr. Phillips had no legitimate medical basis for making such claims about my mental state. Crystal opened the folder and spread papers across my coffee table with dramatic flourish. "These are simple financial organization forms," she explained, but her voice carried an edge of barely controlled anxiety. "We need you to sign them tonight so we can protect your assets before you make any more confused decisions about money management." I picked up the first document and immediately recognized it as a durable power of attorney form that would transfer complete control of my finances to Marcus. The second document appointed Crystal as my healthcare proxy, giving her authority to make medical decisions on my behalf. The third was an application for voluntary admission to a memory care facility in Jefferson City. "You want me to sign myself into a nursing home?" I asked, allowing genuine shock to color my voice. "It's not permanent," Marcus said quickly, though his eyes could not meet mine. "Just until we can get your financial affairs organized properly." Crystal has found a really nice place with private rooms and excellent medical care. You'd be much safer there while we handle the complicated business of managing your lottery money. Crystal leaned forward aggressively. Dina, you're destroying this family with your selfishness and paranoia. Marcus deserves better than watching his mother throw away his inheritance because she's too confused to make rational decisions. I refused to sign any of the documents, explaining calmly that I wanted time to review them with my own attorney. This reasonable request triggered an explosive reaction from both of them. You don't have time for attorneys, Crystal screamed, jumping to her feet. These debts won't wait for your legal consultations. We need that money now, or we're all going to face serious consequences. Marcus tried to grab the papers from my hands, his face flushed with anger and desperation. Mom, you're being completely unreasonable. We're your family, and we're trying to protect you from making terrible mistakes. Why can't you trust us to do what's best for everyone? I stood up and moved toward the kitchen, hoping to create some distance between us. Crystal followed me, her voice rising to a shrill pitch that echoed throughout the house. You selfish old woman, that money doesn't belong to you. It belongs to this family. Marcus is your only child, and you're stealing his future because you're too senile to understand what's happening. The argument escalated rapidly as we moved through the kitchen toward the basement door. I was trying to reach the landline phone to call for help when Crystal's composure completely shattered. You're going to sign those papers right now, or I swear I'll make you sign them, she threatened, grabbing my arm and twisting it behind my back. When I pulled away from her grip, she shoved me hard toward the open basement doorway. I tried to catch myself on the door frame, but my momentum carried me forward, and I tumbled down the wooden steps, striking my right arm against the concrete wall and hitting my head on the bottom step. Pain exploded through my body as I lay crumpled at the bottom of the stairs. My right arm was bent at an unnatural angle, and I could feel warm blood trickling from a cut on my forehead. Through the haze of pain and shock, I heard Crystal and Marcus talking urgently above me. She tripped, Crystal said loudly, as if practicing her story. She was confused and disoriented walking around the house in the dark. We tried to help her, but she lost her balance near the basement stairs. Marcus's voice carried panic and guilt. Crystal, this is bad. Really bad. What if she's seriously hurt? Shut up and help me think, Crystal snapped. We stick to the story. She fell accidentally while doing laundry. We're concerned family members who came to check on her because we've been worried about her increasing confusion. They called 911, and I listened to Crystal's Oscar-worthy performance as she reported my accidental fall to the emergency dispatcher. She described finding me at the bottom of the stairs, mentioned my recent cognitive decline, and emphasized how worried the family had been about my safety living alone. During the ambulance ride to Springfield General Hospital, Crystal and Marcus continued coaching each other on their version of events. They believed I was too disoriented from the fall to understand their conversation, but pain medication had not affected my ability to hear their conspiracy clearly. The doctor needs to know about her mental confusion, Crystal whispered to Marcus. I'll show him the documentation we've been keeping about her forgetfulness and poor judgment. This accident proves she can't live independently anymore. What about the financial stuff? Marcus asked nervously. Perfect timing, actually, Crystal replied with chilling calculation. Now we have medical evidence that she's a danger to herself. Dr. Phillips can declare her incompetent, and we can get emergency guardianship to protect her assets. We'll be at the bank first thing tomorrow morning. At the hospital, they presented themselves as devoted family members dealing with the tragic decline of a beloved elderly relative. Crystal provided emergency room staff with her fabricated evidence of my mental deterioration, painting a picture of a confused woman who had become increasingly unable to care for herself safely. We've been trying to convince her to move to assisted living, Crystal told the attending physician while I underwent x-rays for my broken arm. She gets angry when we suggest she needs help, but tonight's accident proves our point. She could have been killed wandering around that house in the dark. Or Marcus nodded solemnly, adding his own lies to support Crystal's narrative. She's been forgetting to eat, leaving appliances on, getting lost during simple errands around town. We love her dearly, but this situation has become dangerous for everyone. While doctors set my broken arm and stitched the cut on my forehead, Crystal and Marcus sat in the waiting room discussing their plans to visit First National Bank the following morning. They believed they had successfully positioned themselves as concerned caregivers dealing with a family tragedy. We'll withdraw enough to cover the immediate debts," Crystal planned aloud, assuming I was too sedated to understand their conversation. "Then we can take our time figuring out the best way to access the rest of the money." Marcus seemed troubled by the violence of what had occurred, but Crystal quickly suppressed his guilt with reminders of their desperate financial situation. "She brought this on herself by being stubborn and selfish," Crystal said coldly. "If she had just been reasonable about helping family, none of this would have been necessary. Now we do what we have to do to protect our future." They had no idea that Betty had discovered my absence when she noticed my lights were still on well past my normal bedtime. She had already contacted Sam Rodriguez and attorney Harold Morrison, setting in motion the consequences that would destroy their carefully planned deception. As Crystal and Marcus celebrated their assumed victory in the hospital waiting room, discussing how to spend my lottery money, they remained completely unaware that my hidden security cameras had recorded Crystal's deliberate assault in perfect digital clarity. Their false triumph would last exactly 12 hours before reality crashed down on them with devastating force. The next morning dawned gray and cold, matching the storm that was about to engulf Crystal and Marcus's carefully constructed world of lies and manipulation. They arrived at First National Bank of Springfield at 9:15 minutes after the doors opened, carrying their forged power of attorney documents and fraudulent medical statements. Jennifer Walsh, the bank manager, greeted them with professional courtesy in her corner office overlooking the main lobby. Crystal and Marcus had dressed formally for the occasion, Crystal in a navy business suit, and Marcus wearing his best tie, both projecting the image of responsible family members handling difficult circumstances. "We appreciate you meeting with us on such short notice." Crystal began settling into the leather chair across from Jennifer's desk. "As we explained yesterday on the phone, we've had to obtain emergency financial authority for my mother-in-law due to her rapidly deteriorating mental condition." Marcus placed the manila folder on Jennifer's desk with theatrical solemnity. "Mom had a serious fall last night that put her in the hospital. Her doctor confirms what we've been observing for months. She's no longer capable of managing her financial affairs safely." Jennifer examined the documents carefully, asking detailed questions about my medical condition and the circumstances that had led to this emergency intervention. Crystal answered smoothly, having rehearsed her lies extensively during the drive to the bank. "Dr. Phillips has been treating Dina for increasing confusion and memory loss," Crystal explained. "Last night's accident was really a wake-up call for our entire family. She could have been killed wandering around that house in the dark, trying to do laundry at midnight because she was disoriented about the time." The forged power of attorney documents appeared legitimate on surface examination. Crystal had done her research well, including official-looking medical letterhead and Dr. Phillips's forged signature on documents declaring me mentally incompetent to handle my own financial decisions. "We need to withdraw $2.8 million immediately," Marcus stated with practiced confidence. "Crystal has identified several assisted living facilities that can provide Mom with the specialized care she needs, but most of them require substantial upfront payments to secure placement." Jennifer nodded sympathetically and began processing their request through the bank's computer system. Crystal and Marcus exchanged satisfied glances, believing they had successfully overcome the final obstacle to accessing my lottery winnings. "I'll just need to verify the account balance and available funds," Jennifer said, typing commands into her terminal. The first sign of trouble appeared as confusion crossed Jennifer's face while she reviewed the account information on her screen. She typed additional commands, checked different account numbers, and finally looked up at Crystal and Marcus with obvious bewilderment. "I'm showing a current balance of $1,237 in Mrs. Patterson's checking account," Jennifer announced. "There must be some error in our system. Let me check her savings account as well." Crystal's confident smile faltered slightly. "That's impossible. The lottery money was deposited directly into her primary checking account. $6.4 million minus taxes should show a balance of approximately $4.2 million. Jennifer checked every account associated with my social security number, ran searches by name and address, and even contacted the bank's main computer center to verify that system maintenance had not caused any database errors. "Mrs. Walsh, there's no error," she finally reported. "Mrs. Patterson's checking account contains $1,237, and her savings account has $892. Those are the only accounts we show under her name or social security number." Marcus leaned forward aggressively. "Where is the lottery money? $4.2 million doesn't just disappear from a bank account. We demand to speak with your supervisor immediately." Jennifer's professional demeanor shifted subtly as she recognized the increasingly hostile tone of their demands. She pressed a discreet button under her desk that would alert bank security to a potentially problematic situation developing in her office. "Sir, I understand your concern, but our records are accurate," Jennifer replied calmly. "If Mrs. Patterson had received a large deposit from lottery winnings, it would certainly appear in our system. Perhaps the funds were deposited at a different financial institution." Crystal's carefully constructed composure began cracking as the reality of the situation penetrated her consciousness. "This is impossible. We saw the news coverage when she won. The lottery officials confirmed the amount. Where could $4 million go?" "Ma'am, without Mrs. Patterson present to authorize the release of detailed account information, I can only confirm current balances," Jennifer explained. "Bank privacy regulations prevent me from discussing specific transactions or transfers with unauthorized parties." Marcus pulled out his cell phone and began making increasingly frantic calls to other banks in Springfield, demanding to know if my lottery winnings had been deposited in accounts at their institutions. His voice rose with each unsuccessful call, drawing attention from other customers in the main lobby. Crystal grabbed the fake power of attorney documents from Jennifer's desk and waved them frantically. "These papers give us complete authority over Dina's financial affairs. We have the right to know where our money went." Jennifer examined the documents more carefully this time, noting inconsistencies in formatting and signatures that her initial review had missed. Her suspicions about the authenticity of the paperwork grew stronger as Crystal's behavior became more erratic. "I'm going to need verification of these documents from the issuing medical facility," Jennifer stated firmly. "Bank policy requires independent confirmation of power of attorney claims, especially when they involve substantial amounts of money." At that moment, the bank's main entrance opened and Detective Ray Murphy entered with Officer Collins, both in full uniform. They approached Jennifer's office with purposeful strides that immediately caught Crystal and Marcus's attention. "Jennifer Walsh." Detective Murphy inquired, though he clearly recognized the bank manager from previous interactions. "We received a call about suspicious activity involving potential financial fraud." Crystal's face went completely white as she realized that law enforcement involvement meant their conspiracy had been discovered. Marcus tried to maintain his composure, but sweat beads appeared on his forehead despite the cool morning temperature. Officers, there's been some kind of mistake, Marcus began, but Detective Murphy raised his hand to interrupt. Mr. Marcus Patterson and Mrs. Crystal Patterson, the detective confirmed, checking names against information written in his notepad. We have security footage from your mother's residence showing events from last evening that require immediate investigation. Officer Collins stepped forward with handcuffs as Detective Murphy continued his explanation. You're both under arrest for elder abuse assault conspiracy to commit fraud and attempted theft. You have the right to remain silent. Crystal screamed as the handcuffs clicked around her wrists. This is insane! We're the victims here. That old woman has been hiding money from her own family. We have legal authority to manage her finances. Marcus tried to run toward the bank's rear exit, but Officer Collins intercepted him, easily wrestling him to the ground as other customers scattered in alarm. His shouts of protest echoed throughout the marble-floored lobby. My mother is mentally incompetent, Dr. Phillips confirmed her diagnosis. We're protecting her from making irrational financial decisions. Detective Murphy smiled grimly as he secured Marcus in handcuffs. Dr. Phillips is currently being interviewed by state medical board investigators about his role in falsifying medical records to support elder abuse. The security cameras from your mother's house recorded everything, including your wife's deliberate assault. As bank security cleared the lobby of curious onlookers, Jennifer provided Detective Murphy with copies of the forged documents Crystal and Marcus had attempted to use. The detective's examination confirmed what Jennifer had suspected about their fraudulent nature. These power of attorney forms contain forged signatures and fabricated medical statements, Detective Murphy explained to Jennifer. The suspects were attempting to steal approximately $4 million from an elderly family member through fraudulent means. At that moment, Attorney Harold Morrison arrived at the bank, having been contacted by Detective Murphy as soon as the arrests were made. Harold carried an official briefcase containing legitimate legal documents that would explain the mystery of my missing lottery money. Detective Mrs. Patterson established an irrevocable trust 3 weeks ago that transferred the majority of her assets into legal protection, Harold announced to the assembled group. The trust structure makes it impossible for anyone to access those funds through power of attorney guardianship or any other means. Crystal's legs buckled when she heard this information, and Officer Collins had to support her weight as the full implications of their failed scheme became clear. Marcus stared at Harold in complete disbelief. She couldn't have done that, Marcus whispered. She's too confused to understand complex financial arrangements. Dr. Phillips documented her mental decline. Harold opened his briefcase and removed a thick folder containing signed documents, notarized statements, and mental competency evaluations conducted by independent medical professionals. Mrs. Patterson underwent comprehensive cognitive testing by qualified neurologists who confirmed her complete mental competency, Harold stated. She was fully aware of your conspiracy to defraud her and took legal action to protect her assets while documenting evidence of your criminal behavior. Detective Murphy radioed for additional officers to transport Crystal and Marcus to the county jail for booking and processing. As they were led away in handcuffs, Crystal continued screaming threats and accusations about family betrayal and stolen inheritances. "You'll never get away with this!" she shouted at Harold as officers escorted her through the bank's front doors. "That money belongs to Marcus. She can't steal from her own son." Marcus remained silent during his arrest, the weight of his betrayal and criminal actions finally settling on his conscience. As reality replaced the fantasy world Crystal had constructed around their financial desperation. Private investigator Sam Rodriguez arrived at the bank as the police cars departed, carrying additional evidence that would strengthen the criminal case against Crystal and Marcus. His investigation had uncovered the full extent of their gambling debts, employment problems, and systematic planning to defraud me of my lottery winnings. "The evidence is overwhelming," Sam reported to Harold and Detective Murphy. We have recorded conversations, falsified medical records, forged legal documents, and clear video evidence of the assault. The district attorney expects to file formal charges within 48 hours. Jennifer Walsh worked with Harold to restore normal banking operations while ensuring that my accounts remained secure from any future fraudulent access attempts. The attempted theft had been prevented completely, and my financial assets remained safely protected within the irrevocable trust structure. As news of the arrests spread throughout Springfield, community members who had been manipulated by Crystal's lies about my mental condition began coming forward with information about her deceptive behavior. The network of deception she had built over months was unraveling rapidly as the truth emerged. Betty arrived at the bank to drive me home from the hospital, my right arm in a cast, but my spirit stronger than it had been in months. For the first time since winning the lottery, I felt completely safe and in control of my own life. The trap we had set had worked perfectly, and justice was finally being served. 3 months later, on a crisp February morning, I sat in the Springfield County Courthouse watching as Crystal and Marcus faced the consequences of their criminal actions against me. My right arm had healed completely, but more importantly, I had reclaimed my strength, dignity, and independence through this difficult journey. Crystal stood before Judge Patricia Henderson in orange jail coveralls, her once perfect blonde hair now showing dark roots, and her arrogant demeanor replaced by desperate pleading. The gambling addiction that had driven her to steal from family had been exposed completely during the legal proceedings. Mrs. Patterson, Judge Henderson addressed Crystal with stern disapproval. You have pled guilty to elder abuse assault in the second-degree conspiracy to commit fraud and attempted theft of over $100,000. The evidence against you shows a calculated, systematic attempt to defraud a vulnerable family member through medical manipulation and physical violence. Crystal's attorney had negotiated a plea agreement, but the judge's sentence reflected the serious nature of her crimes against me. I hereby sentence you to 4 years in the Missouri Department of Corrections, with eligibility for parole after serving 2 years. Upon release, you will serve 3 additional years of supervised probation and pay full restitution for medical expenses and legal fees incurred by the victim. Marcus stood beside his wife, tears streaming down his face as he faced his own sentencing. His betrayal of our mother-son relationship had hurt me more deeply than Crystal's violence, but I had found peace through understanding that he had been manipulated by someone who preyed on his financial desperation. Mr. Patterson, Judge Henderson continued, while the court recognizes that you may have been influenced by your wife's gambling addiction, you are an adult who made deliberate choices to participate in defrauding your own mother. You are sentenced to 3 years supervised probation, 200 hours of community service, and mandatory participation in family therapy counseling. Marcus would also pay restitution and face permanent restrictions on accessing elderly family members' financial accounts. The judge's conditions for his probation included regular employment and complete transparency about his financial activities. Dr. Phillips had already lost his medical license and faced separate criminal charges for falsifying medical records to support the elder abuse scheme. The Missouri State Medical Board's investigation had revealed other questionable practices in his treatment of elderly patients. Outside the courthouse, Detective Murphy shook my hand warmly as reporters documented the conclusion of what local news had called one of the most elaborate elder abuse cases in Springfield's history. Mrs. Patterson, your courage in fighting back against this conspiracy probably prevented similar crimes against other elderly victims, Detective Murphy said. The evidence you gathered and your willingness to testify will help protect countless other families from financial predators. The financial resolution had exceeded my most optimistic expectations. Harold Morrison's irrevocable trust had protected every penny of my lottery winnings throughout the entire ordeal. The trust structure he had designed provided me with monthly distributions that covered all my living expenses comfortably while preserving the principal amount for charitable giving and legitimate family needs in the future. The beauty of the trust arrangement, Harold explained during our final legal meeting, is that even if they had succeeded in gaining guardianship over you, they could never have touched those assets. The money legally belonged to the trust, not to you personally, making their entire scheme impossible from the beginning. I had decided to establish the Harold Patterson Memorial Foundation in honor of my late husband, focusing on elder abuse prevention and financial literacy education for senior citizens. The foundation would partner with local law enforcement agencies to train officers in recognizing signs of financial exploitation and provide resources for elderly victims of family fraud. My first donation supported the Springfield Animal Shelter's new facility, fulfilling the charitable intention that had motivated me from the day I won the lottery. Additional grants funded literacy programs at 3 local libraries and expanded the food pantry services at First Methodist Church. The personal transformation I experienced through this ordeal proved more valuable than any financial windfall. Therapy sessions with Dr. Amanda Foster, a qualified counselor specializing in family trauma, helped me process the betrayal and rebuild my confidence in making independent decisions. What you've accomplished, Dr. Foster explained during one of our sessions, is the difference between being a victim and being a survivor. You recognized the abuse-gathered evidence, sought help from qualified professionals, and fought back effectively. That takes tremendous courage and strength. Betty had become even closer during the months of crisis. Our friendship deepened through shared adversity and mutual support. She often joined me for coffee on Sunday mornings, and we would laugh about how we had outsmarted criminals who thought they were manipulating a helpless old woman. Dina, you taught me something important about standing up for yourself, Betty reflected as we sat in my garden on a warm spring morning. Age doesn't make us powerless unless we choose to believe it does. You prove that wisdom and experience can defeat youth and greed every time. My sister Janet had extended her visit from California, staying through the trial and helping me establish new routines that prioritized my own well-being over family obligations that had become toxic. Our relationship had grown stronger than it had been since childhood, built on honest communication and mutual respect. I'm so proud of how you handled this situation, Janet said as we worked together replanting my flower garden. You could have been intimidated into giving them what they wanted, but instead, you chose to fight for what was right. That's the sister I remember from when we were kids. The community response to my story had been overwhelmingly supportive. Many neighbors and friends shared their own experiences with family members who had pressured them for financial assistance or questioned their ability to manage their own affairs. My willingness to speak publicly about elder abuse had opened important conversations throughout Springfield. Pastor Williams invited me to share my experience during a special church service focused on protecting vulnerable congregation members from financial exploitation. The response from attendees led to the formation of a support group for elderly adults dealing with family financial pressures. Your testimony reminded our congregation that Christian love doesn't include theft, manipulation, or abuse, Pastor Williams said after my presentation. Real family relationships are built on respect and genuine care, not financial expectations or inheritance greed. The most difficult aspect of my recovery involved rebuilding a relationship with Marcus after his probation began. Family therapy sessions with Dr. Foster provided a safe space for us to address the damage caused by his participation in Crystal's schemes. Mom, I know saying sorry isn't enough, Marcus said during one particularly emotional session. I let Crystal convince me that you were becoming confused and that we were helping you. I should have recognized that her gambling problems were driving everything, but I wanted to believe we deserved that money. Marcus's divorce from Crystal was finalized while she served her prison sentence. He had moved into a modest apartment and found new employment with an insurance company that specialized in elder care policies. His community service hours were served at the Springfield Senior Center, where he helped elderly residents with basic financial literacy education. I'm learning about the exact kind of exploitation I participated in, he admitted during a family therapy session. Every week I meet elderly people who have been pressured by family members to make financial decisions they weren't comfortable with. I understand now how wrong we were. Rebuilding trust with Marcus required consistent actions over time, not just apologies and promises. He attended every scheduled therapy session, completed his community service hours enthusiastically, and demonstrated financial responsibility through steady employment and transparent money management. Recovery from betrayal happens gradually, Dr. Foster explained to both of us. Trust is rebuilt through consistent, reliable behavior over months and years, not through dramatic gestures or emotional speeches. As spring turned into summer, I established new traditions that reflected my values and priorities. Sunday morning coffee with Betty became a sacred ritual where we planned community volunteer activities and discussed books we were reading. Tuesday afternoons were reserved for foundation board meetings where we reviewed grant applications from local charities. My bridge club had transformed into an informal support network for elderly women dealing with various family pressures. We shared strategies for maintaining independence, discussed warning signs of financial exploitation, and celebrated each other's successes in standing up to unreasonable demands from adult children or relatives. The security camera system remained active in my house, not because I feared additional threats, but because it provided peace of mind and evidence that my daily activities reflected complete mental competency. The monthly recordings were stored securely by Harold Morrison's law firm as ongoing protection against any future claims about my cognitive abilities. 1 year after winning the lottery, I reflected on how dramatically my life had changed through experiences I never could have imagined. The money had revealed the true character of people around me, both positive and negative. More importantly, it had revealed my own strength and capability in protecting myself against sophisticated criminal manipulation. The lottery win that had initially seemed like pure blessing had become the catalyst for discovering that I was stronger, wiser, and more resourceful than I had ever believed possible. Fighting back against Crystal and Marcus's abuse had required me to access reserves of courage and determination I didn't know existed. You know what the real prize was, Betty observed as we watched sunset from my back porch on a peaceful evening in late summer. Not the money, but learning that you could handle whatever life threw at you. That's worth more than any lottery jackpot. I had learned the profound difference between being generous and being exploited. True family love doesn't come with financial ultimatums or threats of abandonment. Setting firm boundaries doesn't make someone selfish. It makes them wise enough to protect their own well-being while still helping others appropriately. The greatest wealth I had gained wasn't measured in dollars, but in self-respect, authentic relationships, and the knowledge that I could face any challenge with intelligence, courage, and dignity. My lottery winnings were safely invested doing good work in the community through carefully planned charitable giving. Most importantly, I slept peacefully every night, knowing that I had protected myself and potentially saved other elderly people from similar exploitation. The Foundation's work was already preventing elder abuse cases throughout central Missouri, turning my personal ordeal into positive change for countless families. As I sit here today surrounded by genuine friends who value my company rather than my bank account, I realize that winning the lottery was just the beginning of my story. The real victory came from refusing to be a victim and fighting back against people who tried to steal my independence, dignity, and financial security. Have you ever had to stand up to family members who demanded things you weren't comfortable giving? Sometimes the people closest to us can become our greatest challenges, but finding the courage to set boundaries protects everyone involved. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story reminded you that it's never too late to fight for yourself and protect what matters most, please give it a like and share it with someone who might need encouragement to stand strong against family pressure. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories about finding strength in difficult times. Thank you for listening to my journey from betrayal to justice. Remember that your age doesn't define your power, your choices do. Stay strong, trust your instincts, and never let anyone convince you that you're too old to fight for what's right.